the things we're still continuing to find and unfold as far as funds moving around, what exactly it means. As far as PDI is like I know I talked about it last time, the NFTs that had been sitting around in LPs and just different aspects of it, and who actually controls them. And I mean, we did see Richard pretty much bought the top of ETH, and I think that might have been for a reason. I think that he was also using and being able to utilize the same functionalities of the contract that other people aren't allowed to yet, because I believe that he has the ability, he's an admin, or he has admin rights to be able to use the SDAI contract in ways that other people aren't, which is why you can't see the SDAI in his wallet when you look at it on Etherscan, but you can go to Arkham, and then sure enough, it's sitting there. So he's so there's definitely ways for him to be able to do this, and being able to implement and utilize that contract in a way to where you can literally take SDAI and then take a 20x leverage out against it, a 20x leverage loan against SDAI, and then send that out to the ARB bots, and then they don't make a trade that's unless it's going to make them money. So if he only had $1 million, he's able to literally take $1 million, leverage it to 20, and make 20x faster.
Just consolidate, liquidate.
So
75x.
Yeah, it just seems like he's trying to replace before he even tries to take the value off ETH. He's going to try to replace the value, but because if he doesn't, and he just dumped the value on Pulsechain, the ARB bots would still attack it, move it around, and would still find fair value with it. They wouldn't. So it's just like he's got to be able to. I believe if he's going to do it, he's got to make sure he dumps it in the right liquidity pools at the right time. But I think it's going to be more of a slow go. It's not just going to be a 1, 2, 3. All of a sudden, it's pegged type thing. I think these things are just gonna unlock over time. But he could though. He could. I mean, he's got 600
million. Some bars, bro. Like just spitting bars for days. I swear.
Yeah,
bro.
kind of how I do it. But yeah, he's got around $400 million to $600 million that we know that he has, and then another, the money that's sitting inside that liquidity pool. So yeah, man, definitely exciting times.
Bro,
yeah.
that's so lit, bro. You have no idea. Like, just too lit. Just
I've been looking at this been looking at it far too long.
I know, right?
Harbonomics.
I do.
Yeah, we were talking about what country Richard Hart's going to walk up to and say, this has now got a Pulsechain.
Right. That's going to be, who knows, right? Be able to have that kind of opportunity. He probably has, I mean, that's what I'm saying. He literally probably has so much money that he literally had to launch his own chain. And the SEC breathing down the Ethereum's neck, probably waiting for the top of that. Like, I mean, I think what did Maria say as far as timing goes is when they assume that this could possibly reach its
she said November, or he said November.
November. That's wild. And then we got the halvening. You said around 420.
But remember,
Bitcoin.
he said it's going to reach the peg by November, so it's going to reach the dollar.
A dollar.
But it's not going to stay there. It's gonna
Right.
take a long time to stabilize. But there's going to be a lot of arbitrage opportunity, and that's why. Just like people are mentioning on the Pulsechain dark web, it's and Sunny and Hodlonomics. They it's important to not go too crazy with PDI, because there's other things in the ecosystem that can go above that 200x potential because of the arbitrage and all that stuff. People tend to forget about Luna, but it's almost similar to Luna, but with a lot more dynamics that keep it a lot more stable over time.
And that's the thing about like MakerDAOs, whenever they're speaking about their new stable, well, it's not even stable coin, like SDAI will be their stable coin, but their other token that is going to be arbitraged into and away from, it's going to fluctuate from 75 cents to $1.25, and it's going to allow for 25x the amount of arbitrage that a regular PSM, price stability module coin would. So it's like literally going to help find its own value. And I think PDI is going to sit at the center of all that, but the reason it's probably not going to fluctuate as much is because of Atropa, doing what it needs to do, and then the S die ecosystem, and then if Richard activates the vaults, this will be like so multiple ways to help spread PDI out, and then also help it maintain near the near dollar. But yeah, it's definitely gonna, even whenever the first PDI launched, or the first DAI launched, it like ran up to $1 and then down to 70 cents and did some wild stuff before it eventually found fair value.
Yeah, so Rig, I don't know if you want to run through again just like a high level summary of like what you found related to like Hexanaut, Winter's Mute, sort of like kind of like the rebrand that we think is going to
Oh,
happen, and basically DAI
well,
gonna
yeah,
gonna be find its home on Pulsechain. Like run
right.
through
Well,
that. I'm curious if anybody has any questions about that because we cut off last time.
Yeah.
For people to ask
So
questions.
yes, yeah. So MakerDAO, it's they're running this thing called the end game, where literally their end game is going to be leaving Ethereum, launching their own chain. It's going to be a stablecoin chain, but there's going to be no more DAI. It's going to be WP DAI, WP USDC, and it's going to be literally a stablecoin chain. And the DAI that's on Ethereum will no longer be minted over there. It might still exist and be in circulation, but it won't really be under control by Maker, as they are rebranding and changing. They're becoming more of a meme. That's what that's literally what Rune said, and they're taking their supply and multiplying it like 25,000 or 24,000 to 1. So the only places that Maker itself will still exist at that point will literally be Pulsechain, and then in ETH it won't be like an ongoing thing. You'll still be able to, I think you'll still be able to swap in and out of it for a certain period of time, but then then in and of itself, then the end game itself is just them and Spark, which is like Spark DAO, who's not they're not truly affiliated with MakerDAO. They're a part of a sub DAO because they're just playing by the rules. They have zero affiliation with them. They're just they got voted in through Whales and through Winter's Mute. So Winter's Mute is a liquidity bootstrapping bot algorithmic trading company that is a part of Aave's and MakerDAO's consensus or DAO. Like they hold like a pretty large portion, and they received around $25 million from MakerDAO at one point in time, which coincidentally enough, they sacrificed around $22 million into Pulsechain. And you can literally just go and you can find that. And you can find all that they were like part of their DAO. They got voted on to help them bootstrap liquidity. They became and they are one of the top trading liquidity bot companies in the entire world. Reaching worth tens of billions of dollars. So it seems like that was a huge connection. With all the arbitraging that we're seeing. And just the level of it, the so this seems, in my opinion, and from what I could tell, they sacrificed millions of dollars. Richard was holding a bunch of DAI at one point. It seems like him and this guy that was a engineer at MakerDAO who went by the name Hexanaut, ended up ended up being the person to actually first implement the price stability module, the PSM module for DAI itself. He put the vote up one time and they voted him down, and then he put the vote up again a little later on and it ended up passing. And he was Hexanaut back then, and he's still Hexanaut to this day. And it seems like him and Richard, I'm sure, had some sort of relationship, because in my opinion, Spark itself was designed and built to scale DAI for the exact reasons of launching and being able to bridge onto new chains, and then the fact that DAI itself could not be lent out, and which is one reason why DAI was always so protected, because it was 150% collateralized ratio. So if you wanted to take a flash loan out against it, you would get 66 cents on the dollar. So, but with SDI, it's like literally the exact opposite. You can literally take 20x leverage against it. Um, uh, and since Spark has launched, and since it's only been about 8 months since they've actually, not even 8 months since they've been really live. They've have netted around $1 billion, but they had a total value locked of around 6 billion, and have pushed MakerDAO into becoming one of the most highest grossing protocols this year by far. And with Blast as well. Blast was designed pretty much for a very fast and efficient way to move on and off chains. And literally both of them combined, like Maker talks about it, their goal is to scale DAI to 100 billion DAI by the end of like 2025. So it just seems I don't know if you can't, if it's just a coincidence that he's a Hexagon. It's a coincidence that he used to work at MakerDAO. It's a coincidence that he used to actually, design stablecoin mechanics, and that he's now came up with a method that literally that has turned stablecoin ecosystems into money printers, because you with Morph Labs, you can take your ETH, wrap it as collateral, and you can make APY on it. Then you can take your wrapped ETH while you're still holding it, use it to swap it into DAI, to SDAI, especially if you're the owner of the protocol. Then you literally have your wrapped staked ETH and your SDAI making right now 10% a piece in collateral and not collateral and APY. So like right now, I mean, Richard could be possibly making around 40 million a year while still being able to deploy assets. Because of that setup and that mechanic, which is literally a money printer with on top of the PSM model, which is the automatic market maker that just front runs buyers and sellers based on if they're coming to buy or sell. It pushes the price up or down before they come in, and then the stablecoin company or whatever it is, stablecoin market maker, pretty much just isn't able to net profit the whole way through. And they're actually coming out with a new type of model that is a fixed interest rate, which I believe, what's it called? It's like a deco and something else that they're going to be using, which is like a 30% fixed interest rate for holding it, because there's such a high fluctuation in value up and down with the Maker protocol, that just holding it, I believe, said that they pay up to 25% APY, because I believe that the arbitrage that they get from the fluctuation goes to the stakers or the holders of the actual protocol, because it fluctuates, upwards of 50% up and down. So that's kind of the narrative there. Is that they hold voting, and then I even saw that winners mute themselves, and Rune. A lot of people got mad at Rune, who's the owner of MakerDAO, because he would like some of these votes that came in to do certain things would literally happen overnight with Spark, and Spark had no reason, or had no rhyme or reason to have to do what they did, to pay 10% to Maker and 10% to Aave, and to get voted in as a sub DAO. Like, they didn't have to pay them just because they copied or were utilizing their protocols. I think it was just a way to bootstrap community and bootstrap ideas, because of him having the affiliation that he once had with Maker. And also, it's clear that that protocol and pieces of that protocol were running on Pulsechain long before people even knew what Spark was, such as the SDAI, such as the collateralization with different tokens, with what we saw, what we've seen in that one vault. So it's like some of this stuff has been working and been sitting and been tested over here, like very early on, and it was definitely here working, and before anyone knew about it, right? And then the copying of some contracts and copying some contracts, forcefully not copying others, and then leaving some transactions out, some transaction history out. And I think he did that because it would have inflated the supply of the stable coins too much. So he literally cut it off at a certain point to make sure that the supply, there wouldn't be more than so much of the supply floating around inside the ecosystem for people to either come back and get their hands on, or come back and exploit another protocol. So yeah, That's the rundown on that end. I mean, he literally said he knew something. I think, the fact that we have Maria and this dude, it's pretty wild. Like, seems like in my opinion, it seems like it's a bunch of benevolent people that are, either friends or not. They're all working together for the same goal. And if they weren't friends or if they weren't working together at some point in time, it seems like they see each other now and they see what each other are doing, and they're all, making moves. I mean, we saw Richard's, he wouldn't have dropped all that DAI into a protocol if he didn't trust it. He wouldn't have dumped $400 million worth of DAI into SDAI unless he trusted the protocol. And I think that he plays a vital role, if not the biggest role, into why that protocol was designed. I think that, he probably helped design it, in my opinion, with him. He'll never say that. I think he'll let the younger guy, Sam, ride the glory. But, speaks volumes whenever he buys anything. When Richard buys anything, you need to be paying attention to it, in my opinion, right? So the fact that he was, he dumped all of the value that he retained, in the sacrifice into that protocol, and then, swapped it out, and then is still holding some of it that we can't see, is should be eye-opening to what could possibly happen. I think he's also doing it so he can farm the airdrop because there is an airdrop happening, and the more you interact with the protocol, the bigger of an airdrop you get. And then technically, instead of them just showing up over here, he could vote for them to come over here, which would just be quote unquote a decentralized manner. But in my opinion, we don't necessarily need Spark to be here, because we do have a working protocol. We would just need a front end built, and we would need SDAI to get above $1 for it to make sense. I mean, right now it's working like a regular contract. It sells for $1. I know it buys for $1, but when you sell it, it sells for less than $1. So it hasn't quite reached parity on that end. But there is the Spark XYZ Spark Swap XYZ, which I have no idea if they're affiliated with them or not. They are onboarding people with eDAI directly into SDAI, and it seems to be to help. Again, another benevolent factor in this is that they're pushing value into it. I mean, the other pairs are just, there's really no liquidity in it. The main liquidity and is the eDAI SDAI pair at the moment, but there is a little pair between eDAI and PDAI. I mean, I'm sorry, SDAI and PDAI, and there definitely was a transaction like a couple of years ago on ETH, and then a transaction on, I believe, on Pulse that was like a 50 swap, like a 50 token swap, where it worked out just like it didn't matter what the value was. It was just 50 to 50 one direction. It just works. It's just the way the contract works. So if he can't release the contract too early, in my opinion, because it would still assume that the token's $1 when it's not. So it would mint you $1 of SDAI, but you're not giving it $1 of DAI. So I think that's one of the reasons we might be waiting as well, for him to be able to deploy the SDAI that he has, and then probably wrap the Ethereum, bridge that over, or wrap it and leave it there because of Morph Labs for the passive income. Wrap it, leave it, bring, and then bring 400 million of SDAI over. Things started, I guess. That's at least that's the value that we know that he has. And then, I saw him swapping into value was going into some bots and being deployed towards Binance a couple of days ago. Wallet, but when it's $2 million coming from one way or another, and the value of that one wallet went from 40 million to 80 million, relatively quickly. So it seems like he's putting some of the funds to use, and by sucking value out of not Ethereum, but other exchanges and other chains, because I think he already realizes how much value he might be taking from, the Ethereum protocol to begin with. And I think he's always said that to us. His goal is not to harm Ethereum, but to just be able to help it become less congested and a more widely adopted ecosystem. Yeah.
Something we were talking about a good deal was how he's able to, or some of these transactions aren't showing up, or some of these values aren't showing up in wallets. Did you want to talk about that more?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's clear that's well, like I said, that's because Etherscan kind of sucks. Number one, and number two, it might be because he's not holding that on. He might not be holding the S guy on Etherscan. It could be it could be on another chain. It could be in a smart contract that doesn't recognize it. Uh, it could be wrapped and it could be set inside of an NFT where he could set the value to 0, which we've seen someone do. That's affiliated with certain things. So it's like something is recognizing the value. The same thing with like the Explorer that I use today was showing me value where the other one on Etherscan just wasn't, right? Like the value isn't on Pulse, right? Everything might just be 0 tokens across the board for whatever reason with no transactions when that value should have been copied over. If he copied the entire chain and then came to it, there's value over there, there's transactions over there in these wallets, but for whatever reason, there's certain wallets that certain wallets were copied for a reason, and there's certain wallets that he avoided for a reason. So in my opinion, if he saw that they were quote unquote phishing scams and he copied them, I think that there's a reason behind it. And if there's a reason that something isn't labeled something and he didn't copy it, there's a reason for it. So that's just that's what I found by looking into it. And also, Etherscan sucks in and of itself, and we know PulseScan needs a little bit of work. But I mean, you can get enough value out of just as long as you can get the contract address over and plug it in, and do a little bit of clicking around. You can definitely see some very unique things that have been occurring between the blast protocol, maker protocol, and Aave inside, just like different aspects, whether it's NFTs or liquidity providing, or the copy liquidity, that should have been in this contract but seemingly has been moved over to another area, and then having to hunt down the value in and of itself, can be a little bit of a task. But I don't think he's like, again, I think the whole reason is it's not like he's hiding it from people. He just doesn't. It's almost like it's a preordained or a preset or a pre-told or a preconditioned thing to where, I don't want to have to dump $1 billion of liquidity out of Ethereum. I want to be able to, bootstrap them and help them get some liquidity back and make sure that whenever I make that move, if it's not affecting them, even though it shouldn't anyway, because it's not showing up, which is, oddly enough, which is weird enough anyway, that it wouldn't, I've seen some other things that still show up over there that technically were like bridge hacks and things like that would still show the value at least. But yeah, there's definitely some rhyme and reason, and I believe some not necessarily partnerships, but understanding that what's going to happen anyway, and what the ultimate plan is to do with some of that funds. And I think them and Maker, clearly have a goal in mind, and they've had a plan in mind, and I believe that's why Maker changed their whole game plan all of a sudden and wanted to turn it into a ETH proof of work fork, with this like a proof of work, proof of stake hybrid with Atlas as an AI technology, and I believe that is also going to play a role on Pulsechain. I think it's already playing a role inside the bots. We just haven't been told anything about it. But I do think that AI and things like that are already playing their role inside the winner's mute and that sort of ecosystem. I know you can already kind of use Atlas because like Spark is using that Atlas protocol to decide if a protocol or a community or whatever is strong enough for them to launch the protocol on, or to provide assistance within the protocol, the lending protocol. Like you can literally plug it in and it'll run like a back test on certain things through the use of AI. So I know that's I think it's called Atlas, I believe. So it seems like either they trusted us really early on, or they already knew what the plan was since the get-go. And I don't know if this was a preordained thing, but it seems like they have a plan and they're sticking to it. And it's never, of course, it's going to take time, but I know that there's a lot of people within this ecosystem that are kind of struggling to, not just understand kind of like why he would do one thing or the other. And in my opinion, it just makes sense to attempt to, rather than just continue dumping millions of dollars into the chart that's just going to get eaten up and taken away. He could this way he can literally make a passive income, um, not have to dump, and then still be able to mint value out of the tokens that he holds in a lot of other protocols, which would bootstrap bootstrap a lot of other communities' liquidity pools to bring them over. And in my opinion, when we're at the dollar, that's just the beginning, because that's whenever people will really realize that they have value over here. And then with the incentive token doing what it needs to do, when it finds value, the pools become very, very juicy to start providing liquidity for. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak. It's just, it's Richard Hart. He always has to deal with FUD and, everything else that comes along with it. But usually that just brings together a tighter, stronger, smarter group of people that just believe in him more. And then, that little piece, from a small little spark can come a great fire, in my opinion. And that's why I've always tried while everything else has been going on, I've always sat around and done my research and tried to do what I could to where I could, speak this best I possibly could, because I believe in it. So, pretty deeply, and at least so I can provide the information that I have, so prove me wrong, so they can come back and just say, hey, no, this is what I found, this is what's going on, and let's go back and look at it some more. So, I mean, without that, without a little debate, that's why me and Sponge always go back and forth with each other. That's it's just the point of being able to find the actual truth of what's going on. But that's also why we've derived and gotten to where we are right now, because we went back and forth so long, and until it almost felt like it was pretty solid theory. And it's still adapting and changing, but when the blockchain itself, like y'all know, just it doesn't really lie, but it can be it can be deceived, but it doesn't lie.
I also think it's important to remember that who has the most incentive to peg DAI. I mean, Richard Hart is probably one of the, if not the biggest holder of DAI. So basically double his bag, and
Maker
then
Maker's right behind him too, so
exactly.
him and
Yeah.
Maker would be incentivized. Yeah.
Yeah, not to mention, I thought it was interesting, and I don't know how many people know this, but we were talking about how, what was it, 2019? I don't remember what year it was, but back when DAI had some stability issues, and RH came in and sort of saved the peg. When was that?
Well, he did it with USDC too. So whenever, not too long ago, I think that was just like a year and a half ago, whenever USDC got decorrelated and he threw $40 million at the chart, and actually I think it was like 30 or 40 million. He ended up making like 5 or 6, 7 million. But I think I'm sure there was other times that he did the same to DAI itself. But since it's so heavily backed by USDC, the smartest move would not to be thrown into DAI, because it would have just been eaten up the other way around. So if you want to provide liquidity into something, you throw it on the opposite end and then it arbs over. So that's why he would have bought USDC, because then it would have been arbed over properly into DAI, because that was so that's what he did, and he actually made a profitable trade. And I think that was just because it just seems like that was a friendly thing to do, and obviously it was to all protect his bags. There definitely was other times DAI itself got depegged, but not whenever he had that much value riding on it. He definitely was part of helping it get back to where it needed to be. Yeah, there was people in the VC at the time dumping. I remember that, just dumping the bottom of it because everyone was just panicking, and the curve pools were becoming heavily incentivized one way or the other. So it was becoming a madhouse because of those. And I think that's a reason they got worried, and they still might be worried about all the debt that was incurred over time by stables backed by fiat. Because when you back something by fiat and you mint a liquidity pool, you're minting 2 tokens out of thin air. So you're literally putting $2 of fake value technically on the chain, because you have to have one end or the other. I guess you could mint it with $1 and back it with something else. So at the very very worst case scenario, you're minting half of the value of a liquidity pool out of thin air. And over time, that builds up a lot of debt, which is why we saw and have seen DAI start burning DAI, and a lot of it. And I also believe that's why he burnt his DAI on Ethereum when he did. You know, probably at the worst possible time, but it was, I believe, for more of a reason than we know. Good stuff.
A trip of dev doxing themselves. I mean, technically
That was
they already
bullish, man.
did, but you know, the video and shit.
Yeah, I think it's massively bullish. We saw what happened at the price. It happened to be on one of the days that we had planned on having a chat too. So it was pretty exciting that there was just a lot of zooming going around that day. A lot of you could feel the bull market in the air for the first time, and a little bit on Pulsechain that you know that how everything was kind of falling into place. And I know a lot of people doxing and things like that is a huge thing for some people, and you can tell that he's a rocket scientist, dude. You can tell that he's a very smart dude, and he's pretty much exactly what I expected he would be, which is
I wanna
super
get
fucking
some
smart.
behind the scenes information about how that meeting went. Because I saw one clip that was pretty interesting about how what's his real name? James. I'm just gonna keep calling
Yes,
him 414.
James.
414 was saying how there's a lot of cohesion between Ethereum and Pulsechain, and that there's a lot of big players from ETH currently working with. It was a little cryptic. I don't know exactly what they meant by that, but
Right. Well, it would just make sense though, because like you have two stores next to each other that technically should be the same value, and over a long enough period of time, and depending on the whales going one direction or the other, it would be. So it would just make sense for them to look after each other, so to speak, because we definitely see cohesion happening. It's just how quickly things move. The one beautiful thing about Pulse though is the fact that we will and can be running independent of yeah, I mean, usually we run with it, right? Because Bitcoin, but bonded liquidity wise, our liquidity is bonded to stable coins, right? It's not bonded heavily to BTC like ETH is. BTC and ETH are probably the heaviest liquidity pair that there is to exist across any exchanges. And then, the fact that we're tied to, stable coins could potentially give us a way to move independently of the market, which could be a bad thing sometimes and a good thing. But I think it's ultimately going to be a good thing. It's just going to take time for people to catch the narrative, to understand what's going on, and to just continue to DCA, because it doesn't take a lot of money for this whole ecosystem to do what it needs, to pump or find value. And the way that it's being built in a decentralized mechanic through layered liquidity from the very bottom, and then having dead liquidity ends, kind of, where it's not really traded if it's just the R bots. Like Ethereum didn't have decentralized exchanges for a while. They didn't have bonded liquidity right at the very beginning of their chain. Like, this is something that we're setting up as a foundation of the entire ecosystem, is this bonded liquidity pairing. And then you have a Tropa on top of that, and then you have like Sunny and PTC, these other people that are tying coins together, liquidity together, taking a liquidity token and pairing it with a liquidity token, and then pairing that with the liquidity token, and then pairing that with Pulse, and the R bots will still trade it. Like, so it's just, there's a lot of unique things that we're seeing happen over here that we just haven't seen, that I've never seen on other chains. Definitely didn't see on BSC, and I just, and I don't think they had the ability to even be able to do that on ETH. And I think we're setting a standard that's probably going to be front ran by a lot of other ecosystems. I think everyone, especially with CCIP coming out, then that will be the new narrative. The new play will be forking your own chain, or launching your own chain, and just having that ability. I think this time is just it's not a 6-month front run. It's not a 2-year front run. I think Richard Hart has front run the market by 4 years. So I think it's going to take a little bit for people to catch on to what's going on, but I believe that people will catch on, and ultimately it's going to be because the foundation that this community's laid out, and the narratives that have that will have been achieved by the time that rolls around.
I see a huge opportunity right now, and if we could connect Pulsechain into this opportunity, I could see all of us here, being aware of what's going on here. I mean, I see a huge opportunity, and I want to get it out to everybody. I want it to benefit everybody. Like,
That's it,
that's
man.
my mindset.
Yeah, the crazy thing about Pulsechain is that it's honestly it's the way that it's built and the way that it's got the arbitrage bots and different things that are everyone's spinning up and running on it. Like like this thing literally will mint volume in and of it in and on itself, and over time, over time, just by the arbitrage bots alone seeing value on this side because the copies and the pairs that were copied over are just undervalued. That over time
So
it's gonna continue to do its thing, and
you
things will
think that's an
reach
arbitrage
a level.
moment, right?
Oh, it's
Like,
it's constantly arbitraging. That's why, like the one thing that we're calling out, right? The one thing that we've been watching is the copy die, the die copy itself, which launched at less than $1. It's still like it's done a couple thousand of X, like it's probably like a 10,000 X, and it
dude,
still
I
has
saw
another five.
P die, bro, and I was like,
Yeah, that's what we're talking
I had a
about. Yeah,
bag, and I definitely
yeah,
doubled that bag many times.
yeah. So that's one of the big narratives that we have pushing. I believe that's probably end up being one of the biggest narratives, if not the biggest narrative, in
See, we
crypto.
can work, like what you're saying with P die is we need to lock up P die, and we need to make it less available on the market, like, so that it matches the price of
Yep. Yeah. So there's an entire
dies.
ecosystem called a tropa. I don't know if you know
Mm-hmm.
what a tropa. There's a tropa, and then there's a couple other people like I said, Sonny. He has an entire ecosystem being built around the copies, which is
Okay.
the entire point of the entire point of the ecosystems are to be able to provide passive rewards without necessarily ever having buyers or sellers. And then yeah, there's a bunch of just super unique, like in my opinion, like it's Otropa itself is a maker DAO, like a decentralized maker DAO copy. It doesn't exactly work like MakerDAO, but he controls which direction those bots go. So like through different liquidity ends and different tokenomics and different mechanics, he's created a monetary, like literally a monetary theory of how fluid, like money flows through an ecosystem with money mints at the Federal Reserve. Whenever there's debt in this, debt in the system, it starts flowing a different way and it mints from another area. And
Right.
like he's literally created a way to help to help push PDI to where it needs to be pushed to. And then I believe once it reaches where it needs, that dollar area, it's going to then, kick on a whole nother level. And as well as, just people's consensus and, in general, whenever when a community believes that something is worth $1, uh, then that's its value. Like when you walk to the store to go buy some milk with a $20 bill, it's that piece of paper doesn't mean that it's $20. It's the fact that you are transacting with another human being at the store that believes that that is $20. So I think that's pretty much the same model that we had here, but we have it in a way better, unaffiliated and a decentralized model. Being able to build it from the ground up. There's no VCs here. That's why there's gold. That's why there's gaps here, right? For whatever reason, and for good, in my opinion, the VCs and the big guys, they don't like Richard. So their money doesn't come here first. Eventually their money will come, but it's going to be the first time, in my opinion, that we'll be able to sit around and laugh and dump on them because they'll come, but they're going to come whenever we've already been sitting here for a while and being the and building it up. So
Yeah,